Some of our speakers are voting or are doing things in Parliament, so they will be out in probably dribs and drabs as they come out. But we have got quite a few speakers, and I would like to acknowledge those people, particularly the members of Parliament, who are brave enough to come out here and actually say what they believe in terms of our journey as North Queenslanders and what we need to make this part of Australia prosperous and actually to benefit the entire nation, and that is what it's about. I'd like to thank George Christensen, our federal member from Dawson, for being here. Knuth, our member for Hill. We have Bill Bates, who is a long-term lobbyist with Boot Brisbane. He's been holding forums up and down the coast, and his group's done a lot of work. Jason Costigan, the member for Whitsundays, who is here. Yes, there he is. And he's formed a new party, which is the North Queensland First Party. Alan Parker, who's a respected cane farmer, is also speaking. Thank you, Alan, from the Burdikin. Nick Dametto, our member for Hinchinbrook, and also Stephen Andrews, the member for Mirani, will be here. I don't think he's here yet. Okay, and of course Robbie, the member for Traeger, and I really am thankful for those gentlemen coming here today to talk to us. Of course, we are recording this set of speeches and this today, so it will be available on social media, and of course we have a huge following on social media on a number of web pages, one of them being Yes to a North Queensland State. So before we start and before I introduce the first speakers, I do want to acknowledge a man that many of you know or knew. He's no longer with us. I want to acknowledge a man who has laid some foundation stones for us, as many men and women who have in the North Queensland separation journey. I'd like to acknowledge Laurie Fabrellis. He is said to have been the rock that many stood by, and I didn't have the pleasure of meeting him. But now he is the foundation that we stand on, he and his group. There were various others, of course, but I'd like to acknowledge him because I was presented and have with me as sort of a charm of going forward and good fortune, a flag that he commissioned, which is a North Queensland flag. And of course, I think it was the late 70s or early 80s this flag was commissioned. So this is with us today, and Laurie is with us today, I have no doubt. I'd like to acknowledge his work and the work of many other men and women, because people have been fighting for this for a long time. But we are about to emerge on a magic number, and that is 1 million people. And when you have 1 million people, economically you can make things happen. And I'll let other people talk about that. But before we start, thank you very much. And here's to Laurie. And also now I would like to introduce George Christensen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nanette. Thank you for mentioning Laurie Fabrellis. Laurie, I did have the pleasure of meeting as a politician, and I'm sure Bob's met him on quite a few occasions. As a politician, I don't know, sometimes it was a pleasure to meet Laurie because you never were unsure or left wanting to know what Laurie was thinking, and he let many people know what he was thinking about North Queensland, formed that North Queensland Separation League. It was that popular. There might be people here from the Burdikin, and they know that they have a Harvest Queen festival every year, and watching some of the old newsreels and footage that was taken of that back in the 60s and 70s, here was the North Queensland Separation League float with the North Queensland Separation League Harvest Queen entrant waving at the crowd. So it just shows you what popularity that the cause has had over time. But I think right now, actually, it's coming into its own. Nanette's just said that we're reaching the million population mark in North Queensland. I was listening to none other than the nationally renowned demographer, Bernard Salt. He's no dummy. He's worked for major consultancy firms. He's got a major consultancy firm of his own now. He's advised governments and major corporations. And he said just the other day to a gathering of North Queensland mayors, that the separation of a new state of North Queensland will be inevitable because the population will demand it. I can say right now, while our numbers aren't big here, let me just pause for a minute and just say that don't be disheartened about that. I heard, it's one of those stories which I don't know will ever be proven, that it took 13 men getting together and forming a cabal to get the communist revolution going in Russia. It took 13 men to get a revolution going all around the world. It was Jesus Christ and his 12 apostles. And while I don't invoke divine intervention, what we can say is that where there's a will, there's a way, and there are enough people across this state in the north who are fed up with how things are going. They are fed up not just with not getting our fair share. I mean, if that's all it was, you could probably lump that. There's a lot of people down in the southeast corner. We expect when there's a big population down there that there's probably going to be more infrastructure dollars rolling down there. The problem is when governments start trying to play off one section of the state from the other. And that's what's happened under this Palaszczuk Labor government. They've tried to pull the green interests in the southeast corner, get them on side to get their preferences and get their votes. And they do it by slipping into the mining sector. Well, they were really called on that at the federal election, and they've rolled over. But they're only doing it because of the votes. And it shows you the power of the north, actually, when we can do that. But they're now trying to pull it on farmers. They've already done it with graziers. They got one bloke in court at the moment who's going to have to pay over $1 million. Another fellow who's going to probably lose his farm because of these tree clearing laws that they put in, affecting our way of life, our industries, and our jobs up here. They've got laws that they're proposing. They're going to affect cane farmers, have bureaucrats down in the southeast corner micromanaging their farms for them. They've got commercial fishermen under the pump here. We've got commercial fishermen that are facing potential ruin. I've talked to some crabbers, professional crabbers, who are going to have their take cut by over 80%. I've talked to some fishermen that are having their take cut by half. This is what happens when you have a government dominated by different interests down in the southeast corner. Time and again, they're ramming through laws now which affect what we do up here, telling us what to do, what not to do, and how to bloody well do it. Well, we can do that on our own. Now, I see that there's Labor MPs that have trawled out to sort of say up here, we don't need a separate state. What would happen to state of origin? Don't treat us like mugs talking about state of origin. I mean, it's much, much bigger than that. It's much, much more serious than that. This is about our future. This is about whether we have jobs in the future for kids up here. This is about whether we have prosperity for the people of North Queensland. That's what it's about. That is what this is about. And I just say one final thing, that this can happen. This can happen. There's parties that are already listening to this and reacting to it. The LNP is going to put in a minister for North Queensland. That is a very good start. It shouldn't be the end point, it should be the start point. Have a community advisory panel that you set up. Involve local mayors, local community leaders. Get a quasi-parliament happening. And then you can move on from there, where we can have self-governance, where we can eventually push for statehood. It will be a long journey, but I think it will be a journey that is going to be inevitable as our numbers increase. The only thing that could potentially stop the idea of a North Queensland state is us. If we do not support it, then it will not be supported. If we want it, we will get it. More power to us, more power to the Boot Brisbane campaign. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for George again. It's a big effort to come up here and speak about that. He makes a lot of valid points. Up next, we've got Shane Knuth, member for Hill. Shane, come up here, mate. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Just to give you the heads up, I was at a rally back in 1999 at Whitton, where we had these draconian environmental laws pushed upon landowners and forced upon them, but passed through Parliament. I wasn't in Parliament at that time, but I was in Parliament 2004, where they passed through legislation to remove our freeholding land rights. In 2006, they introduced what they call the Wild Rivers legislation. And fortunately, it was constitutionally taken on by the Aboriginals and it was defeated. Back in 2009, they introduced what they call the ERMPs, and it's great to see all the landowners here today and here today protesting. But these ERMPs was that if you got didn't fill out this form to show where the washouts are, you'll get a $70,000 fine. If you refuse to fill out the form, you'll get jail sentences. So this was all supported by mostly Southern MPs. Then back in 2009, they introduced what they call reverse the onus of proof. That means that you are guilty before proven innocent. So in other words, that if you knocked over a plant, you could be in jail before the decision was made whether you're guilty or not guilty. But being a member of Parliament, in my experience, 2009 we sold the coal component of Queensland Rail. $1.8 billion of transport haulage was going back to the state of Queensland. That was money going back to schools, hospitals, roads. Now, as they've sold that, I found out last year that those companies that they sold it to, $3.6 billion profit each year, are going back to not the taxpayers, not the hospitals, not the schools, but going to multinational, transnational corporations. But who made that decision? The majority were South Queensland members. Now, not a single cent had gone back to us. $75 million went to the Roma Street Parklands upgrade. $1 billion went to the South Bank upgrade. There's now a push for a $5 billion went to tunnels, and now the Roma Street rail system that they've been going on about, that's another $5 billion, and yet no money is going back to us. But where we're also kicked in the guts, that out of $3.6 billion in royalties back in 2016, here in North Queensland we only got $100 million. And you can Google that and you can find that. All that went to the southeast corner. And every decision that happens down there in Parliament, and as you travel up here, and as kids we used to swim in our waters, freshwater streams, water holes, we could swim. Now if you swim them, you get ripped to pieces. We introduced legislation to be able to protect those people that swims. Guess what happened? They voted it down, and Brisbane MPs not only voted it down, but spoke vehemently against it and said that we were virtually in an illusion. So, there's a lot of speakers here, ladies and gentlemen, but just to say that it's great to see the organisers here that are taking the effort to highlighting, bringing it to the attention of the people. 2009, 2 North Queensland seats were abolished, put in the southeast corner. Now there's only 13 out of 94 seats. Back in 2009, in the last redistribution, they were about to take another 2. But the only reason why is Robbie and I introduced legislation so that we can increase the members of Parliament from 89 to 94. Now that sounds stupid. How dare you increase the members of Parliament? But we knew if we didn't increase those members, we would have another 2. We would have been reduced back to 11. So ladies and gentlemen, that's only just a small scale of some of the things, and it frustrates us, particularly as we see the vegetation management that's been hit again, the reef runoff, all decisions that are about North Queenslanders made down south. So commend the organisers, well done, congratulations, and you've got our 100% support.
Thank you, Shane. Shane makes some really good points, and some figures I want you to remember. remember, there's $20 billion coming to Queensland and Commonwealth GST distribution. How much of that are we getting? There's $5 million in mining royalties. How much of that are we getting? There's $3 million in state taxes. How much of that are we getting? There's $1 million in ergon energy dividends, if you want to call them that. How much of that are we getting? We're paying high prices for electricity. We don't have water security. We have to fight tooth and nail for almost everything to go our way. Just have a think about that. There are 93 members of parliament from Bundaberg up. We're looking about 20 that represent the central, the northwest, the northern and the far north, compared to the 73 in the southeast corner. And out of those 73, 70 live 250 kilometres from the Brisbane CBD. Have a think about that. Okay, I'll now pass it over to Bill Bates, who is a Boot Brisbane lobbyist.
G'day, Don. Boot Brisbane was formed in response to the 2017 electoral boundary redistribution. That redistribution, as Shane mentioned, created 4 more seats in southeast Queensland. By the 2025 electoral boundary redistribution, there's expected to be another 560,000 voters added to the roll. With the southeast Queensland population growing at 2.5 times the rate of regional Queensland, we can expect anywhere between 5 and 6 additional seats to be created in the southeast corner. And we'll be hard pressed because there are much slower population growth to retain our 18 seats in central and north Queensland. So after the next redistribution, you'll be looking at a parliament with about 98 seats, and it'd be lucky if central and north Queensland maintains its 18 current seats. One of the most common catch cries of people opposing a new state is, "Oh, not more politicians." But the problem is, every ill that we have is from the lack of representation. It's this lack of representation that is committing us to the fate we are enduring at the moment, because all the legislation comes out of Brisbane basically to provide and enhance the boat harvesting in the southeast corner. The million people of North and Central Queensland are entitled to good governance. The nearly 1 million residents of North Queensland have a right to a parliament that governs in their best interests, rather than policies and legislation of the Brisbane Parliament which are framed to appeal to the sensitivities of the 4 million residents of southeast Queensland. The nearly 1 million residents of Central and North Queensland expect that the resources of their regions be developed to provide them with opportunities, prosperity, and now and for future generations. The nearly 1 million residents of Central and North Queensland are deserving of at least the same political representative as is afforded to the 500,000 people of Tasmania. The 500,000 people of Tasmania have got a bicameral state parliament with 40 MPs. They have 5 federal members and 12 senators. The nearly 1 million residents of Central and North Queensland have 18 MPs in a 93 unicameral parliament. 6 federal members and 3 senators who choose to reside in the regions. They're not our senators. They simply choose to reside in our regions. Of our 18 state parliamentarians, many would argue that many are merely the mouthpieces of their respective Brisbane party headquarters, rather than that of the representatives in Brisbane of their constituents. The nearly 1 million people residents of Central and North Queensland are disastrously underrepresented. Only statehood can address this imbalance. Now, a lot of people here bring up fair share. It's not about fair share, it's about our underrepresentation in the Australian system of government. If we continue to accept the status quo, Brisbane will continue to make our decisions for us. Brisbane will continue to determine the infrastructure priorities. Brisbane will determine Brisbane will continue to filter the $1 billion in GST redistribution allocated to our regions through the bloated public service administration before it trickles down to fund the services of our region. Brisbane will continue to decide on what projects the billions of dollars in royalties from Central and North Queensland will be spent. And Brisbane will continue to set our electricity prices. By the time of selecting the first settlement on the Brisbane River in 1824, it only took the pastoralists of Moreton Bay, Wide Bay and Nanette 35 years to free themselves of the rule of the Sydney Parliament and found the colony of Queensland. It only took 22 years from there for the first petition to Queen Victoria to separate from the South Division from Central Division of Queensland Colony. And the last petition was in 1890. But the events of that petition were taken over by Federation. Since Federation, there have been a number of ill-fated agitations in both Central and North Queensland to secure statehood. The desire to separate from Brisbane is nothing new. It is a recurring theme of our history. So how is 160 years of Brisbane making decisions for us working out for you? Those drafting the Australian Constitution had the wisdom to provide for the creation of new states. In fact, they devoted a full chapter, Chapter 6, entitled New States in the Constitution. However, they never foresaw the willfulness of the future state parliaments to deny the people of the regions of their constitutional right to statehood. Those members in the parliament sitting a mere 100 metres from here this day could initiate the process to deliver a statehood. However, their willfulness will not be easily overcome. It will require a united and sustained effort by us and our supporters. Brisbane's mission reads, through active advocacy, with the support of the residents of Central and North Queensland, calls the Queensland Government to initiate the process to create statehood, the state of North Queensland. You notice the word active. It's not lip service. Myself and my committee put their own hands into their pockets. They make the time to engage and inform the public of the right to statehood and the benefits it would afford. We will take whatever opportunity we can to bring the issue to the attention of the media. We assist to promote events such as this rally and our new state forums to give people the information they need. We also pledge our willingness to support with all other individuals and groups actively engaging in for a North Queensland state in the express hope we can come together under a single banner. As we now approach 120 years of federation, it is incumbent on Central and North Queensland's regional residents, leaders in politics, industry and commerce to invoke the provisions of the Australian Constitution to create a new state, with a parliament that is fully accountable to them and governs in their best interest. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Bill. Look, through this process, Bill's been great with a lot of the information that he provides. It's actually quite daunting to see actually how much we're getting ripped off. I think some of the figures that Bill showed me, I think 75% of our wealth is spent in South East Corner, and obviously I know if I took 75% of your money out of your pocket today, you'd probably whack me in the face. So it's much appreciated, Bill, that you share all that knowledge, and it's great. Next up, we've got the member for Whitsunday, is Jason Costigan. He's also started his North Queensland party, North Queensland First. So over to you, Jason. Thank you.
Thanks, Brendan. Good afternoon, everybody. Can I acknowledge you and Nanette with what you've done and putting this together, and Bill for your leadership in this space. And ladies and gentlemen, there's a few egos that have been parked up here today because all the politicians that are here today probably don't agree on everything. That's an understatement. But we put those differences aside because we're all passionate North Queenslanders. And you know what? It's time to fire up. Yeah. I'm not going to speak for very long, but yes, it's true that I have launched a new party, a new brand called North Queensland First, and I am the member for Whitsunday. And I say to people, you have to be Indigenous to have been in North Queensland longer than the Costigans. Mackay was 3 years old when Patrick Costigan came in 1865 as the town's first policeman. And I know a lot of people in central, north and far north Queensland, and as I said on radio this morning in central Queensland, I think there's sentiment in the community out there more so than in a long time, and I see Bob Catter in the crowd here today. You've got to go back a long, long time to see when there was so much angst in the community, people fired up in different pockets of central, north and far north Queensland, because more people clearly think this is possible. You've heard the numbers, the statistics, and I think you've seen the development of states in the United States coming into the Union. I think there were 17 states that joined the United States of America since the birth of Queensland as a colony come state. So if you're a trivia buff like me, there's 17 good reasons alone. You go to the Dakotas and say, no, you couldn't come and join the Union. Well, nothing's impossible. But community apathy is our biggest problem. I just want to go back to something that Shane Knuth made mention of. And it's no secret that I've come from one of the major parties not that long ago. But the two major parties continue to fail North Queensland, and I'll be the elephant in the room or the elephant on the banks of Ross Creek. And I'll give you the example with the LNP. Not everything with the KAP that I agree with, but the member for Hill rightly pointed out the Safer Waterways Bill that was dutifully put before the Parliament, as you might recall, in the shadows of a federal election. And of course we all know why we're here, because of May 18. Now that bill deserved to be supported, and it was voted down, 87-5. You've got to remember that the LNP member for Burdikin, he don't think there's a problem with crocodiles. That's the sort of mentality we're dealing with. And I can tell you, when I was a member of that organisation, when we were in government, we banged on about giving marketing choice for cane growers. And I remember it getting knocked down. I never sat in the cabinet room, but I always remember 3 days before the election, before Newman was sent to the cleaners, 3 days I was on a cane farm at Bolden on the northern side of the Pioneer River. In my electorate, banging in signs that have been vandalised. And Dr. John McVeigh rang me and said, we finally got it approved and we will legislate as required. The big city Liberals don't get it. And Labor, well, we know how spineless they are. So that's why I think more and more people are looking for choice and people with some spine to stand up for North Queensland. There's no doubt in my mind there's an appetite for statehood and for North Queensland to be Australia's 7th state. I've spent some time, as I conclude, a few weeks ago in the Territory, where I've had relatives through the pastoral industry going back to the early 60s. The Territory wants to become a state too. I say, let's beat them to it. 7th state needs to be North Queensland.
Certainly does need to be North Queensland, and it's about us banding together, even regardless of our political persuasions. We are North Queenslanders, and then we need to stand up for our farmers, our industries, our access to long-term water security for our children and grandchildren, our access to jobs so that our young people stay here and don't go looking for work elsewhere. We've got to band together, all the political parties, and start fighting for this 7th state. I'll now hand it over to Alan Parker, cane farmer from the Burdikin. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Looks like I've got some supporters here. Look, I'll be very short because everything that everyone's just said, you'd have to agree one way or another. I just want to make quick mention, Laurie Frabellis and Frank Rossiter. I grew up having those people in my ear, and people still say, young fella Park, I'm now 56, I'm an old man. And Jason just touched on something that was very dear to me and myself. I've rode on a lot of coattails in the last 19 years with some great people. And trying to get something for the sugar industry in the form of a code of conduct. Jason just touched on something very dear to me first, and that was devastating for us. And people like, and it's a hard gig to, Park's just going to come here and give some party a support, but it's hard not to when you've got people like Bob Catter, Shane Knuth, Robbie Catter, and also George Christensen, who come on a journey back 6-7 years ago that's seen the importance of what was happening to our industry from a milling company, an overseas investor coming in that was going to take our rights away, to formalise a better policy for them and only them. So the only thing we could do was go back to the government and ask for support, and that support come at a huge cost. It come out of probably losing $100 million in the last 3 years to the Burdikin, my hometown, and to see our shop shut. I think latest toll it was 27 shops, and I think there's 87 farms for sale in the Burdikin. And you drive down our main street, it's not looking pretty, and we went to Ingham a couple of weeks ago, and Ingham's not that much better. So that's the reality of it all. That's something you can see, smell and touch. It's not just someone here sitting here now making a speech and trying to pat people on the back, because those people I should be patting on the back have died in a trench to try and get something for their constituents. And to have 13 seats out of 93, well, that's just disastrous. And I suppose that's why we're all sitting here now. And like I said, I was going to be short and sweet on this, but there's something wrong, something needs to be fixed up, and if Bill and his team can show a way forward, well, I'm in it, and I hope everyone else is in it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Max. Hey, next up we've got Nick Dametto from KFE. Nick's been great. If you've seen him, follow him on Facebook and that. He gets out through the community and he's working very hard for his constituents. So give a round of applause for Nick.
Thank you very much, Brendan. And once again, I would have to acknowledge the hard work that Nanette and Brendan have done to put today together, as well as Bill Bates and the Boot Brisbane group. The advocacy work that they're doing in the background, in the foreground as well, is what's going to help get this over the line for Queenslanders and North Queenslanders. Because I can tell you what, the first time I went down to Brisbane, I started talking to a couple of the MPs that you'll see in the House, the 73 that are based right down in the southeast corner. And they said, this lady goes, I just don't get you North Queenslanders. I said, well, we're North Queenslanders and we get us, and you know what we want? We just want to be left alone. We just want to be able to be left alone to govern ourselves. We don't need you down there in 1 William Street telling us we can't do this on our farms. We don't want people down there in State Parliament telling us that you can't do this with your crocodiles, and you're going to be told that until they go in from the southeast corner and until we separate at some stage. Now, I know there's people, all these people behind me here, they all support separate state. I know all you people out there support separate state. That's why you're here today. But I tell you what, I talked to ABC Radio this morning. They said, can you convince all those people in there? I said, I can't. Not without all yous. They're scared of you people out there. They're scared of the voters. They're scared of being kicked out. I tell you what, they won't move unless you make them move. So you've got all the power in the world. I'm going to be short and sweet because all these gentlemen behind us and ladies as well have told us a lot about why we should do this. We all know why we should do this. Now let's work together and make it happen.
Thank you, Nick. Absolutely, let's work together and make this happen. So now I would like to invite Stephen Andrews, the member for Mirani, to speak. Thank you, Stephen.
Hello, and it's nice to be here. George and Bob, I see he's in the crowd there. So, just a bit of history. 1917, they had a referendum about looking to take in our parliament from a dual cameral parliament to a single cameral parliament. They said it was flawed, but in 1922, the Labor Party in the upper Senate fell on their swords and we became unicameral government. This has its pros and cons, and more so bad things for us, and that's why we're all here today. You may not realise that, Queensland at the moment, we've got electricity prices, we get charged at 100 megawatt hours. we are actually 50% to 60% disadvantaged by that. Other states are actually get 160 megawatt hour demand charges, like Victoria and South Australia, and Queensland is very badly disadvantaged. We're stranding assets. We're leaving our dams behind because we can't afford the electricity to actually pump our water. We lost $80 million in the cane around Mackay and the Mirani electorate last year because we couldn't do it. 4% of one of the dams was actually used because the actual Labor Party government does not understand plain figures. You've got to put a bit in to get a lot out, right? And that's what's happening here today. We need to put a lot in to get out of here because at the moment we're so sadly disadvantaged by not having our own voice, by not being able to get into our assets properly, because the people down in the city don't realise. You know, we subsidised them last year, 1.43 million, for a transport system utilised at about 11%. You reckon that's fair? I don't think so. They can't even drive through Mirani. The roads are so bad. Yeah, we got silver service on one end and absolutely no service on the other. Right? So that's why we're all together on this. I believe that the people of Queensland need to put their old rusted on voting practices to one side and start sticking up for members that are actually sticking up for them. You know why? Because I'll tell you something. The democratic process will never work the way we're doing it. Because party politics is not democratic. I'm telling you right now. I stick up for my people as best I can, and I'll tell you something. A lot of times the tail's wagging the dog. Because they're all behind, that they can't catch up to us because we're actually thinking of what we can do for the state, and they're actually following behind. Right? So that's what we need. More good leaders, more people that actually care about our own people and what we're doing in our own electorate. And I'm telling you now, we'll continue to do so, and I hope that the people of Queensland actually wake up, see what's going on, talk to their family and say, we need to change the way we vote so we've got a better future for us and our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Stephen makes a really good point. Get behind future candidates that potentially could be our members in Parliament that support separatism, that support the creation of a seventh state. We do that, we've got a greater chance of making North Queensland shine again and be great again. So I'd like to now introduce our last speaker for today, Robbie Catter.
Thanks, Nanette, for putting this on. You know, all these politicians here, it's probably easier for us in the bipartisan crossbench KP, but I really make special mention of George in my left one now. But good on George for coming here because it's you know it's a tough move, and I know there's a lot of people against that in the major parties, but that's a brave move coming here. So thank you. Just to give you an idea of what we're up against, like I'm relatively new to politics. I've only been in 7 years, and like most people, go down and have that shock of how disconnected they are to us. and that's fine. I was ready for it. You try and you work through that, and you wish you could give people a window into what you see in Parliament to say it's every bit as bad as you think it is, and how your experience is on the ground. Now, we put a motion up in the Parliament. I think it was written by Peter Raffles here about a separate state motion. And everyone jeered. And you've got to listen to this story because I think it applies to how we need to treat this issue. Everyone jeered at us. And Shane and I were there. Nick wasn't in Parliament that time. And Steve wasn't there. But, you know, there was a lot of jeering in the thing and saying this is a joke, and everyone spoke and made a big laugh, making jokes about state of origin. We carried on and spoke and said, you've got to listen to this. This is not a joke. This is serious. This is how we need to, if we want to prosper and develop as a country, not as a state, as a country, you've got to start listening to this. Can we please have a mature debate here? We held our head high. And I recall just sitting there listening. I remember listening to Sir Joe when I was a young bloke, and I always grew up thinking, how did that bloke have so much conviction to do what he did? And, you know, just broke from the West and went up there controlling the state and building everything. How do they have that conviction? And he said, I take an issue at the end and you boil it down and you say, is it right or is it wrong? And this is a discussion I had with our party head. The head of our party said, why are we doing this separate state? I live down in Gympie. You know, it doesn't help me. And I said, you've got to sit back from this and say, is it good or is it bad for the country? It's good. This is how we move forward. The United States, they started with 13 colonies, they have 50 now. In the same time, we've created no new states, they've created 23. They know how to prosper and develop as a country. We've shut the gate on that. Down in Brisbane and those central areas, they cleared the brigalow, they cleared those scrubs, they prospered from that, they built. It gets up to here, no, we can't do any of that. We go to start controlling our waterways and say, can we manage flying foxes, can we manage crocodiles? No, you can't do that because we're desensitising, we're very sensitive to these environmental issues. You can't do that. There's all these constraints. We're just trying to operate and function as a country. There's a huge cultural shift that's growing wider between us and Brisbane. We're trying to say that it can be done better. These things can be managed more efficiently. Those waters running out the Ironsley, Ethridge, Flinders, going out to sea, we're taking nothing out of it. You know, the government's taken $10 million of selling water. Not one of that drop has gone out to a new farm. So they sold the water. But I'll put all these restraints and restrictions and costs associated with it. I don't think they want us to farm out there. I think it's about, I don't think they could care less. I mean, why are they even charging for water? There's no dams or infrastructure to cover on.
Cape City Rail.
So they could have Cape City Rail. That's what we're up against. We will never develop. And I also cast my mind back to, I was doing it last time this came, the state movement, we had a big rolling after that motion for debate in Parliament. And I was doing an interview in Melbourne and ABC, and you need to listen to this story too because it gets you inside the head of what we're up against here. And the interviewer from Melbourne said, you know, but really, if we gave you control up in North Queensland, like, wouldn't you be compromising environmental values and Indigenous welfare, like if you were taking over? I was disgusted. I was shocked that she would have say, how dare she say that to me? I live up there with Doomadgee, Mornington and the Currumbin. I deal with those problems. I deal with the fact that the environment gets ignored. Prickly acacia spread or anything can happen in the environment up there. Pigs, feral cats, whatever can run feral, they don't care about that. They couldn't give a stuff about our environmental issues, but they sit down there and say, oh, we can't possibly trust you to govern yourselves. You're far too mature for that. And that's exactly what they said to Queensland when they wanted to split away from New South Wales in the first place. So what it comes back to is we need to believe in ourselves, because you go away from here, there'll be people jeering in there saying, this is all a joke. We don't need to carry on. It's just a stunt. It's not a stunt. This is about having a mature debate and us growing as a nation. I'd like to think I would be just as much in favour of this if I lived in Melbourne right now. It's as much an issue to people in Melbourne as it is here. We need to grow and develop as a nation. It's not just about North Queensland, as was said earlier. It's about Northern Territory, Western Australia. We want to develop as a country. It's constrained. It's irrelevant. Most of that's, go and listen to what's going on there. It's irrelevant to most of us. We're told, we're made to sit through most of it down there. I can tell you, most of it doesn't apply. Queensland's too big for one set of rules. We need to grow as a nation. And that's why we're all here, and that's what you should be saying back to your friends or any of those people that criticise what you're doing here. I have no problem with being criticised. I'm confident in our convictions of what we're doing. This is the right thing to do. What we're doing going ahead. Thank you. What we're doing going ahead, it is our view in the party that there's just so many ways to attack this issue. We call for a feasibility, just support for a feasibility, even just to put a line through the argument that we can't afford it. And we couldn't even get a vote on that, but that was a pretty soft touch. What we intend on doing in the next Parliament, we want to commit to calling for a North Queensland Parliamentary Council, which should have an executive arm. Form an executive arm with the North Queensland Development Authority, which is controlled by the North Queensland MPs. And, how do you fund that? Well, they can find $5 billion for a cross river rail. All my sisters live in Brisbane. They don't even know why they're building it. Infrastructure Australia said don't build it. They're building to buy base. $5 billion of our money. That's our annual royalties are feeding into the government. They're spending on cross river rail. So what? You can get to work 10 minutes earlier. Who cares? That's what's going to happen. We can do things. We can do great things here in Townsville together. And I'm not just saying KP. We've got Jason here, Steve Andrews, George. We can come together. We've got that power. If we can do this, we can build a Galilee rail line into the Galilee base. It's not owned by a foreign-owned company. We taxpayers get the benefit, as Knuth said earlier. We can introduce relocation sentencing to make sure we start to really fix these crime problems here in Townsville. We can make sure we build dams that provide water for Townsville. We can do these things when we have control. We know what the problems are. We all know what the problems are up here. We can't address them because we'll be talking about something completely different. Maybe not this week. This is all a show for you. when we get back down there, you've forgotten. And we'll go back to the 73 MPs, as they say. So thanks very much for coming. I mean, there's a lot of brave people here because it's not always the popular side, but we're on the side of right. And you need to remember that. And you can say this with confidence, and we'll get there.
And I'm a voter. Why isn't the Premier out here listening to what we say? Why isn't she out here? She's here. She wants to bring the Parliament up here to listen to Queensland. Why isn't she out here listening to what we say?
Where's the Premier? MIA.
Steve, you want to answer that?
Rhetorical question.
I'll tell you something. We had a bushfire the other last year, as you remember. We seen the Premier. She turned up there in a pair of high heels and a white shirt. Right? We were out there driving around giving all the blokes on the front line food and water, the whole lot. It just goes to show. There's a trend there. They don't care. That's as simple as that.
And they're supposed to be voting on our behalf, and they're not even listening to what we have to say.
Bring the Premier out. Bring the Premier out.
Get the Premier out.
Get the Premier out.
And their shiny seats in that Parliament out here and listen to what we have to say. We've been yelling for years, and nobody's listening. We are fed up with it. We are ready. We have the money and they spend it. They don't spend it up here.
Yeah, lastly, I'd just like to thank everyone for rocking up today. Obviously, we had a big crowd this morning with some farmers here. The one point I'd like to make about that, obviously that's a here and now problem with the reef rescue stuff, with the reef regulation. The thing is, if we had North Queensland, we wouldn't have to have those fights. We wouldn't have to have those fights anymore because we'd govern ourselves and things would be a lot more prosperous up here for us. Bob, do you want to say something?
I just want to say there was an article in the paper by a bloke who used to be member of Parliament here, and he said, "You've got no electricity up here." Well, I said, don't you know anything's going on? Because there's enough electricity at Hell's Gate to cover the whole of North Queensland. And then he said, you wouldn't have the money to buy all the hospitals and all the schools and etc. And I said, mate, they're going to offload them so quick because they're all liabilities. They cost them money. So you're dead wrong on that one. And I said, lucky you weren't around in 1900 because you'd have been yelling out at Deakin, Alfred Deakin, saying, you stupid fool, we don't need a separate country from Britain. What are you talking about? And lucky he wasn't around when in California they said, could we have a separate state? Now listen to this one. Listen to this one. They said, we want a separate state, California. They had 100,000 people. North Queensland has 900,000 people. They had 100,000 people. And they now have 41 million people. They are the biggest food producing state on earth. All of your telecommunications, your Wi-Phones and your iPads and all those things. Silicon Valley, which is in California. One of the biggest industries in the world, the entertainment industry, the movies, comes out of California. Oh, geez, Mr. Jones, lucky you weren't around when California wanted to become a separate state. And finally, I conclude, I just want to add this little tiny bit, the great father of water development, outside of our own, of course, Fabrellis and outside. Ernie Bridge said, for those people that could look out through the grimy, gritty, dirty window panes of what is and could see a brief, shining vision of what might be, Mr. Jones, you aren't one of those people. But the people here today, we are. God bless you.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. You say some wonderful things, Bob, and certainly give us a bit of history which some of us don't have. But the final thing I'd like to say to all of you who've come out today is thank you very much. This is just the beginning. We are going to unite these leaders and members of Parliament and others, lobby groups. We're going to unite them and we are going to keep moving forward. I also want to leave on to share with you a war song or a poem or an anthem that was written again in about 1980 by the Separation League. I think it still has relevance today and I think it's very powerful. So if you let me indulge, I'll share that with you now. Advance North Queensland's great. North Queensland all, we must unite and found our own free state. Give to this land its sovereign rights to which we can relate. Our land to be eternally, forever, true and great. In the halls of fame, let us proclaim our own North Queensland state. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance North Queensland great. On land or sea, where you be, stand tall, be bold, be big. And to your mast top fly the flag, our glorious blue and gold. Our land to be eternally, forever, true and great. In the halls of fame, let us proclaim our own North Queensland state. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance North Queensland great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
One last comment. About 8 years ago in Mareeba at a multicultural festival, Bob Catter stated then that we would be importing most of our food within 8 years. What's happened? You think of that prediction? Thank you.